What's going on, y'all YouTube? This is your boy D Weezy. Welcome back to another video. Now, today's video, I watched the latest episodes of certain animes that dropped last week, and I just wanted to come up here and make this video because those episodes influenced me to talk about something that I kind of spent a little time thinking about, but I finally thought about some things and I just wanted to share with y'all. So, without further ado, let's have a random talk. The thing I wanted to talk about, as you see in the title, is the power of an introduction and a reintroduction. Now, obviously, we all understand the meaning of both an introduction and reintroduction, so I don't have to get into the realm of me pulling up the dictionary meanings of both words and terms. So, y'all already know what that is. I just want to talk about how both things can really benefit any anime when done correctly. First, let's talk about the introduction. An introduction can obviously happen in many ways, but they can introduce a character, they can introduce a group, they can introduce a new power, they can introduce things of that realm, but when done right, it can have people really invested in it. Take, for example, in terms of a character, I'm just going to think about a random one. For those who watch Michiko and Hachi, like I did, we've seen the introduction of Michiko, and we see her on the phone call with the orphanage, and we could just hear by her voice and how she dresses and how she carried herself that she's this blunt, stylish person who don't hold anything back. And from that point on, I could tell that a lot of people like myself were invested in not only this show but this character because we can tell that based on all the actions after the introduction and everything was carried on that episode, I was invested in it, and I really believe that the show would lay down to be a pretty good watch, and that's what I believed in until this day. And I watched that show over a year ago. In terms of group, I know this might sound cliche, but I had to bring up the Akatsuki because now it's my favorite anime of all time. Fun fact. The way the Akatsuki was introduced, it was based on how they dressed and how the designs look. Obviously, they're a group, they have the exact same code with the same print, but they come from obviously different villages and have different powers. They have people who have just one very strong power. They have other people who have multiple strong kind of jutsu, and all of them came together in a group. And especially, we could tell that they are going to cause a lot of havoc in the Naruto world, which obviously they did. But because of that introduction, the majority believe that the Akatsuki is arguably the best group in all of anime. So that's another realm of it. In terms of power, this might sound cliche again, but I gotta bring up Gear 5 Luffy. Now, story about Gear 5 Luffy is that I got spoiled of his design and power a year before I even started watching One Piece. And when I was watching One Piece and I finally got to the moment in the episode to when he was officially introduced, the way they went out about Luffy's new power is one of the best introductions that I've seen for me personally. Going from the drums of liberation, going from the way that Zone was hyping up this new power because he sounded like to us he couldn't wait for this moment because he lived so long for him to see Nika again. And we obviously seen how Luffy was carrying himself with Gear 5 Luffy being this goofy, cartoonish character who was really, really powerful. And they went on about it very, very well. And when I was hearing that, I was very hyped. I didn't even care that I got spoiled of the fact of his design. I just never saw how he was introduced. But to me, that introduction is one of the best introductions for anything that I've seen so far. But you probably wondering what was the actual episodes or series that influenced you to make this video. And I have two of them in mind. The two that I have in mind are JJK, or Jujutsu Kaisen for those who don't know, and Fire Force. Now, the latest episodes of those the people who catching up with the anime is from the JJK side. they introduced this character by the name of Hiromi Higuruma. He was this, not he was, but he's this very smart and prestige lawyer who had his own business. He was growing up. He was being one of the top, if not the top members of his class in terms of academics. But in the same realm, he has this very strong curse technique that happened to be one of the most powerful ever since his first year awakening to power. The way that he went about his character with and without the power, and how especially he was not projected. What I'm trying to say is the way that he was presented. That's what I want to say. The way he was presented, obviously with the moments of him in that lawyer room before the retrial when he hit one of these, and especially when him being in the bathtub full of water and the looks he was giving off, and also the moment when he kept beating on the javelin and he first awakened that power for us to have the retrial. Everything that leading up to his fight with Yuji, with him showing off with it, with his whole design of a courtroom type of curse technique that matches who he is because he's a lawyer. I've seen that, and obviously, to all the manga readers, it was heavily anticipated. So obviously, when the anime watchers saw it and the manga readers finally saw it animated, those two worlds combined, and his name took the internet by storm for at least 2 weeks because I've still seen edits, really good edits, by the way, of this guy. And obviously, the cosplayers and obviously the women are gonna be going crazy over him. It's something about JJK men that have these women going crazy. He's Haruma now. It was Gojo, of course. It was Nanami. It was Sukuna. And then obviously Toki, of course. And now it's Haruma. Like, I don't know what it is with it. But I hope you kind of understand the power of an introduction because since they've done it very well, it can lead to people finally either starting the show, reading it. It could be also a moment for them to actually maybe pick it back up if they don't really rock with it that much. When those things happen very well, it can benefit in animation studios really, really well, especially the fans, of course. Now let's talk about reintroduction. Now, obviously, the flip side of a good introduction is a bad introduction. A bad introduction to me is when something is, you know, the term flash in the pan. It's like we see the person, they get introduced, they talk about their power, the way they care about that character or group or power. It just to the point to when they don't do it long enough for us to care about. They don't do it long enough for us to be invested in, which will lead to people having this feeling that these characters or this group have a lot more desire, but the way they care about it, they just didn't have us care. Now if I'm thinking about bad introduction, maybe some of the characters from Baki, because I don't think Baki is all that in terms of a show, even though Baki Hama was a big improvement. It was just the introduction of the five like baddest people in the world at the time who was all like a person or something. Out of those five, the only one I cared about was Biscuit. I ain't gonna lie to you. The rest of them, I just didn't care about it because I didn't really like the designs. I didn't really like those characters in general. I found a couple of them annoying when they were introduced about it and how they cared about it. I just didn't care about it. Another example could be probably some of the characters from Solo Leveling because of how I feel like they dimmed a lot of people, a lot of strong people, especially from that show, just to prop up Sung Jin Woo. That's me personally, my personal opinion. But those two rounds are kind of like bad introductions that I probably could think of from the top of my head as of right now. So now let's talk about a reintroduction. Most of the times, I believe that a reintroduction benefits a side character that a lot of people probably forgot about how strong they are. They probably forgot about even how they look. They could probably forget about how they fight or even how they sound if you watch the anime. And studios, and when a studio can properly reintroduce a character, it can give them at least some sort of resolve as to why I at least care about the character. It may be points to it could be people's favorite character, especially when it can be considered as a rebrand. Because sometimes they don't really do as a rebrand. Some of the times it might be a reintroduction in terms of this character got a power up, and now they can turn from basically a useless character to a really serviceable character at the minimum, maybe even a good one. And I have to go back to JJK for this because I understand now that JJK does a really good job with introductions and reintroductions. But going back to the two series that influenced me in this video, JJK and Fire Force, on JJK sides, I have to talk about two characters in mind, and ironically, they're both in the Zenin clan. First one is Togi. The moment I seen Togi first being introduced and how they cared about his power, and obviously how I'm trying to catch up to his explanation because y'all know he had explanations from that show can be a little overwhelming. But the way that they carried about everything about him as a whole, I saw that I said two words: favorite character. He's been my favorite character from that show ever since. I really liked his style. I really liked his design. I liked how he has this laid back, arrogant style of his because he's not very expressive about himself. But at the same time, he gonna express how strong he is. That's one thing for sure. And obviously, I gotta talk about Maki's image. Maki's been one of my three favorite characters ever since she was introduced because I just really like strong women, especially with glasses, because that's a plus. Well, with her, it was a rebrand because she has all the burns all over her body. Her hair was shorter. She grew a lot more muscle, especially with Mai, who was her twin sister, help her awaken Maki's power to her to be at her true potential because they couldn't because they were twins and they still was shared and whatnot. They already explained that. She had an entire episode dedicated to her. I know it's probably happening throughout all anime, but you have to be really good or really important in some way to have an entire episode dedicated to how good you are and how important you are. The way they went about that whole Zenin massacre, it was one of the 10 best episodes I've seen in 2026 so far. And a lot of people, aka the majority, will agree with me as well. And I've seen the cosplays, especially the cosplays, because the cosplays. That is one example of me believing that a reintroduction is very important once it's done right. Another one is from my second favorite character from the show Fire Force, who goes by the name of Arthur Boyle, aka the Night King. Arthur's been my second favorite character ever since the season started. My favorite fun fact is Benny Maru, aka Big Benny, as I like to call him. The reintroduction of Arthur from this newest season, it had me believing that Arthur is the MVP of the Great Cataclysm from the Fire Force Squad so far. Obviously, Shinra is the main character, and Sho is very important and strong as well. But to me, the MVP so far has been Arthur Boyle. He has two moments that made me believe that a good reintroduction can have people remind you of how good or strong a character really is. The moment when he extracted Giovanni from Yu's brain and his fight with Dragon, which was the latest episode as of me recording this, it dropped on a Friday, so it was 2 days ago. That entire fight as a whole is another one of the 10 best episodes I've seen in 2026 so far for me personally. Especially how they started off as kind of like a folk tale kind of vibe. It kind of gave me David versus Goliath vibes for me personally, with Arthur being David, who was the small, strong underdog, and Goliath being Dragon, who's propped up as this invincible, tall, strong specimen. They was fighting on lavas. They was fighting with volcanoes. They had dragons split the sea, not split the sea, but they had them put a huge hole in the sea. They even had Dragon carry Arthur all the way up to space, and they was fighting on the moon. They had Arthur put on the star ring that you gave him, which will allow him to actually breathe in outer space and him to actually put up a fight. And they had these two people put up straight heavy hits after heavy hits after heavy hits with beautiful animation, with great voice acting, and especially on the side we delivered that finishing blow that split the earth. He actually split the earth, but you get the point of me saying he split the earth. He literally cut the earth in half. They literally had him floating with the stars afterwards with half his body gone. With the way that they showed him that he gave all he had, and he gave everything up as a sacrifice for a greater good. When him saying, I'll leave the rest of you Shinra as his half body is floating with the stars. To me, that is a great way to reintroduce a good character in Arthur Boyle to me. With that reintroduction, I can honestly say that a lot of people have Arthur as their favorite character from Fire Force, with that episode especially. Now, a bad introduction to me is the point of a side character who people already probably don't know too much about, or don't really care about that much, or they don't really care to know about that much. And you just have him or her just straight up show people that there is a reason to not really care that much about it. I was going back to me saying earlier that a reintroduction or introduction can make or break a character or a group. To me, this is gonna sound cliche again, but I have to go back to Naruto because the first thing I thought about with a reintroduction goes bad is Tenten. Anime fans that watch Naruto, you know why I said this, right? You know why I brought her name up, right? The fact that they didn't really give too much information about her, and then they actually reintroduced her to Chunin exams. She fought Tamari, and Tamari beat her up, which felt like 30 seconds, but it was probably under 5 minutes. Which will lead to me having to take this day of, I believe that they dropped the ball with Tenten. I think with her ability and how unique it is and how serviceable she can really be in the battlefield. But they just didn't have too many investments with her, especially with her ability to wield any and every weapon. She had all the weapon scrolls. I thought she could have been at least really serviceable. I ain't asked her to be the strongest woman in the show. I just want her to be serviceable. I just think that Tenten is one of the characters they dropped the ball on, in my opinion. But that's in a prime example to me in terms of a bad reintroduction. And now a lot of people don't even care about her. The most they care about her is how good she looks with her hairstyle and everything. But I just think that they just dropped the ball with her, unfortunately. So yeah, man, I just wanted to talk about the power of introduction versus reintroduction, in my opinion. I saw JJK in Fire Force, like I said earlier, and it really influenced me to make this video because I put some thought into it, and as you can see, I finally made it into action. With that being said, let me know what your example of a good and bad introduction, a good or bad reintroduction in the comments down below. What are your thoughts about Fire Force or JJK if you caught up with it? And with that being said, if you want to do all the things that every YouTuber say at the end of their videos, you can do that or not. Like I always say, you're grown. You can do whatever you want. With that being said, I will see y'all in the next video. Peace out, y'all.